Happy Halloween and welcome to the Signal Watch. I'm your ghost, Ryan Steens. Once again, our cadre of co-contributors creep from the crypt for a spooktacular season of petrifying podcasts. We're reaching into our bag of tricks to line up some horrific treats in the phantasmagoric form of films that find a peculiar perspective on familiar frights. Stay terrified. We're going to try to make it work.
White on white, translucent black capes, back on the rack. Bella Lugos is dead. Jekyll and Hyde. Jekyll and Hyde. Jekyll and Hyde. Jekyll and Hyde. Yeah, well, I look like a woman, but I guess it ain't true. My personality splits in two. Jekyll and Hyde. Jekyll and Hyde. I guess I'm just a Jekyll and Hyde. I'm going steady with Mary.
Happy Halloween! And welcome back to the Signal Watch. As always, I'm your spooktacular host, Ryan Steens. And with me this spooky day is
Spooky Day himself, Simon Day. Hello. Recording in the middle of August in a storm, but for your pleasure at Halloween.
And you want to talk about the theme and then what movie you picked to match the theme?
Yeah, we're kind of trying to do like classic creatures like Dracula, Frankenstein, Dr. Jekyll, but in films that, had a weird twist or were, a little bit different from the usual remakes and rehashes. So in the past, we've done the Universal ones, we've done the Hammer ones. But we're kind of doing stuff that's a little bit weirder, I guess.
Yeah.
And the film carry on. And the film that we are doing today lovely segue, is Jekyll and Hyde from 1990, the television version, starring Michael Caine, Cheryl Ladd, possibly the only US actor in it, Joss Ackland, Ronald Pickup, and Lionel Jeffries, and directed by David Wicks.
Yeah, so I'd never seen this before. I'd read the book of Jekyll and Hyde, and I've seen the 1930s version of Jekyll and Hyde a couple of times.
We had a podcast, didn't we, a couple of years ago or last year, I can't remember, where we watched, was it your favorite version, or you said, no, this isn't your favorite version, your favorite version is another one?
Of Jekyll and Hyde?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't remember. Probably, yeah.
We watched one from the 40s or something.
Yeah, then that would have been it. Yeah, the 1940s version is my favorite Jekyll and Hyde, or maybe one of the only ones I've really seen. I've seen it as a play at some point.
Yeah.
But it's one of those things that is so
there's a lot of versions,
culture. Yeah. I mean, even putting Jekyll and Hyde into IMDb is not helpful.
No, you get thousands, I would think. I mean, I'm kind of thinking off the top of my head, because I kind of did. I was just looking up information about this, and it kind of put like the top 10 Jekylls or something, and then it it had like Michael Caine was obviously one of them, but it had like I guess Edward March, and then there was like some other guys. There was like Christopher Lee did a version called I Monster. Which wasn't a Hammer film, but looked like a Hammer film from the 60s. And then, of course, there was Mary Riley, which is kind of from the maid's point of view with John Malkovich. His hair extends and he gets sexier when he becomes when he becomes Mr. Hyde. And even David Hasselhoff had a go, I think.
That sounds right. I mean, it's a copyright-free story to begin with. It's also something that people have familiarity with just from kind of the culture. And so I think sometimes people decide they're going to do the next one. It's, we're gonna, take a whack at it, find our own spin on it.
Yeah, it's like Christmas Carol, isn't it? Or Moby Dick. You can kind of, everybody knows what they're going to get, kind of.
That is a very good comparison. Yes, I think that's pretty much. It's like Halloween, Christmas Carol.
Yeah, yeah. So I'll give my background for this. I saw this when it was premiered, and it was a big deal in England. Because a couple of years earlier, the same team, at least I think the same writers and Michael Caine and the same director had done Jack the Ripper, which was a very good TV version of the Jack the Ripper case, with, I guess, Michael Caine playing the inspector. Was it Inspector Aberline, I think, who
okay,
was tracking the Ripper.
Yeah.
And of course, at the time, that was like we found all new evidence pointing towards this person. And I think actually something to do with the royal family, I believe. But yeah, so that was a big hit. So a couple of years later, I guess the same team decided to do Dr. Jekyll. And again, very hard push on the TV ratings. I remember like lots of adverts for this before it came out. I can't remember if it was over one night or 2 nights, but it was, it was a big deal. I mean, mainly on the back of Michael Caine, because, I guess we should talk a little bit about Michael Caine's career and TV shows, because like Michael Caine's career in the 80s, he's kind of said himself in a few books that I've read, he wasn't very happy by the late 80s, probably because he was appearing in stuff like Jaws of Revenge. But
right.
but he was kind of saying, he'd got too old to be like almost like a leading man, but he wasn't old enough to be a character actor. So he was a bit kind of stuck. And the stuff they were offering him, most of it which he didn't like, there was the occasional gem like Dirty Rotten Scoundrels and stuff. But most of it, he either didn't want to do or, he just wasn't right for. So I think, he kind of turned a little bit in desperation to TV. And these companies that were like kind of putting in, millions into TV projects, which back then was kind of like, pretty rare. It was unheard of. I mean, this was decades before TV almost became cooler to be in for actors than films. I mean, now it's almost the other way around, But back then it used to be your career was kind of over if you ended up on TV. And this was probably one of the first times that, this kind of like went against that rule, I guess. And this was, and I think these were both big hits. Jack the Ripper and this were big hits. I'll be interested to know how they did in the States. I'm sure they were pushed as prestige productions and probably did pretty well in the ratings. And then, of course, luckily, a few years later, Michael Caine did Little Voice and kind of got his mojo back. And off he went again, Cider House Rules and Oscar nominations, Oscars. And, he's off and running again. But this was like a weird period for him, really.
Yeah, it's funny. I read the book you gave me, Elephant to Hollywood. Phenomenal book. I think we've talked about it before on the podcast, and I'd still highly recommend it. And it's funny to read his interpretation of how things were going, because I think if you ask someone in the States at that point, like no one knows what he's being offered or anything. He's just Michael Caine.
Yeah.
And like I was 14 or whatever when I remember knowing who Michael Caine was when I went to go see Dirty Rotten Scoundrels. And just kind of like, oh well, when we've talked about Jaws the Revenge on this podcast, but even that you're like, well, he went to the Bahamas. Like you kind of always look, you're like, well, yeah, of course he did that movie because it'd be easy, and he got to go to the Bahamas for 6 weeks. So
paid for his swimming
pool. Right. And so I just didn't have a sense that things were not, but I think one of the things that's true about him is, and he's maybe a little different from American actors in this respect, is I think he never quit trying to be working all the time the same way like American actors kind of hit a certain level, and then they kind of expect to either go down, or they make so much money per picture, and it's about scarcity almost with them of you're only going to see me in one thing. But Michael Caine was still, there was the whole joke when I got into college of the Hackman Caine effect of there's always a Gene Hackman or Michael Caine movie on TV at all times. That's true. From that movie PCU. And we just, he was omnipresent. So that said, I do not remember this, but I don't think that's an artifact of this not getting pushed in the States. I think I was just oblivious to it when it was coming out because of the age I was and my utter disinterest in television at that time.
Yeah, and I'm sure I watched it with my parents. I'm sure it was on like a Sunday night, and it was kind of like a big deal. Wow, Michael Caine's in a TV thing. That's kind of weird. Yeah. And of course, Dr. Jekyll. Being a horror buff, I would have been like, I hope they do a good job. I hope they don't, fumble it. And it's funny, watching it now. I watched this. I actually found it in half price books, like we were just saying, on a kind of very compressed DVD with about 18 other British dramas for about $2. Very bad quality, very very kind of like mediocre quality. But that was the first time I'd seen it. I think since 1990. So I guess for about 30, 40 years, and I kind of enjoyed it. I actually enjoyed it. I mean, we can get into it in detail, but I was like, it's definitely of its time. It's definitely of a TV kind of like adaptation of the time. But I kind of enjoyed it. I like the cheesiness to a certain extent.
Yeah, I mean, I would never say this is bad. I would never say it was badly made. It's not. It's just not a bad movie. Like, it's weird in a way that it's disappeared the way it has because of the cast, but it's probably more the nature of it being a TV movie from 1990 is why it's disappeared. I enjoyed it. I don't think it was scary in any way, shape, or form.
No. Well, the way it made me laugh at the start, and it does kind of prime you when it kind of says derived from the story. Yeah, because you kind of go, okay, that could mean anything, basically. And that's a lot of stretch room there,
So, are you familiar with Cheryl Ladd in anything else?
I know she was a Charlie's Angel. That's about it. But I didn't really see that many Charlie's Angels. I think I only saw about 2 episodes. And I always used to mix them up because there seemed to be like about 12 girls. I'm sure there weren't that many, but
yeah, there were a bunch of different women who rotated through as who the Angels were. But I had become familiar with her.
They aged out. So they've hit 25. Get rid of them.
Well, it was more of like as soon as they became popular on that show, they let Farrah Fawcett was a Charlie's Angel, and so she went to go be Farrah Fawcett.
Wasn't Tanya
Roberts?
Yeah, Tanya Roberts. Yeah.
I think she was at the very end of the show. I think she was one of the Angels. But I had just the year before become familiar with Cheryl Ladd when I had taken my very first date to see the movie Millennium, which starred Cheryl Ladd and Chris Christopherson.
Okay.
Amazing movie. I don't know. And that I was told, clearly she likes you because she went to go see Millennium with you. But
she put up with that.
In the press, it was like Cheryl Ladd is in a movie. And I was like, who the hell is she? I had no context of who Cheryl Ladd was or is. And she kind of had this, she had been doing stuff since the 60s as a teen actor and stuff. And she had even voiced a cartoon character. If you're familiar with Josie and the Pussycats cartoon, she was Melody.
Okay.
So she'd been around forever already. By the time we hit 1990, she's about 40 here.
She's looking pretty good. It's funny how she's obviously the imported American star, which you used to have to do to be legit. So it's like, Michael Caine is obviously a big draw, but it's like we still need an American star, and we can probably afford Cheryl Ladd. So,
it just blows my mind of like needing anybody when you have Michael Caine.
she does a pretty good job though, because I mean, like, she goes through a lot in this film, a lot more than the usual kind of heroine, really.
Yeah, I think I mean it was in some ways, like you said, it's derived from the Jekyll and Hyde story, and I've only read the book once, but my memory of it was this character didn't exist. The Joss Ackland character didn't exist in the book.
Neither did this one, or this one, or this one.
I mean, it was mostly like, I'm trying to remember, but I feel like it was someone talking about watching.
Wasn't him narrating? He was narrating. Either Jekyll was or his friend was.
It was either him or his friend. Yeah.
Yeah, and I guess Ronald Pickup was kind of his friend, the guy who actually searched out Cheryl Ladd and was like, he left everything to you. That guy. Yeah. But of course, he didn't do any narrating. He just kept popping up occasionally, going, "Are you all right, Jekyll?"
And Jekyll, of course, is a lot younger in the book too. He's kind of the like, Dr. Frankenstein-esque, like young doctor, like trying to make good on the science he's learned.
Yeah, and it's funny how they kind of, I guess, like, jerry rigged that a little bit to like, have Michael Caine go, I've known you since you were a girl, and I'm like, that's kind of grooming, isn't it? A little bit. Not that he's kind of like, well, I guess he plays it like he hasn't got a clue she's infatuated with him, but it is a little bit icky when you think about it, the fact that he was married to the older sister.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like that's like almost like a Victorian novel sort of thing that they decided they could take license with.
Well, it's very soap opera-y.
Yeah,
well. It's like it definitely goes very soap opera-y, and then kind of seems to remember that he's trying to do Dr. Jekyll and comes back to that.
Yeah, it's very strange that way. They don't spend much time on the horror of what is happening to Jekyll. Instead, they're go ahead.
It changes hilariously fast, like that first time, because like I think we start off with like Hyde running down the street, and he pushes the little girl under the wagon, which I think is under the carriage, which I think is in the novel. And then like they go, "Hey, don't worry, Dr. Jekyll lives over there. He'll know what to do." And they knock on his door. Michael Caine answers the door, and I'm like, "That was really fast. How do you manage that? And get dressed."
Yeah, you're not wrong. I mean, it's but they basically treat it as if you've already read the book in some ways. Like,
yeah, well, you know enough.
Yeah, we're gonna just you know the story. We're not gonna go through the whole thing of his discovery of the science. We're not gonna go through the whole thing of his like creeping horror at what he's done to himself. We're gonna focus instead on this new character we made up and follow her story and how she kind of sees what's going on with, her world, which it's not, I don't love Mary Riley. I thought it was really boring when I went to go see it.
It is boring, yeah.
Okay, I'm glad to know. I don't remember anything about critical consensus on it or anything. I just remember sitting through it and going, why is this monster movie so boring?
I remember it was boring, and then it weirdly got very gross. Even for me, I was like, it just suddenly got a bit disgusting. I think, didn't he grow two heads or something weird on there?
I completely blanked that movie. But when you said it got really gross at the end, I was like, yeah, I think I remember being like, this tone has completely changed at this point. But yeah, it's kind of just strange that they decided to tell this completely other story where it seems almost like the Jekyll stuff is incidental.
Yeah, it's almost like a doomed romance, really.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, kind of like it kind of reminded me in a weird way of American Werewolf in London. Even down to the transformation scene.
Oh yeah, good point.
because I felt like, yeah, it was like, because really Michael Caine, if he's going to play a horror character, he's kind of like, bless him, a bit too stocky for like Dracula, and I don't think you could take him seriously as a werewolf, but you could probably play Dr. Frankenstein. But I think this is the best fit, and it allows him to like stretch his acting muscles a bit. Because I was expecting like some thick slices of ham, but actually I thought he did pretty well when he was kind of getting desperate towards the end.
Yeah, I mean, he's still Michael Caine. I mean, you can put it whether it's a TV movie and and it's an expensive TV movie. Like,
Yeah,
like we
yeah,
should probably like. There's not a huge number of sets, but
no,
the sets they have are perfect. The
yeah,
costuming is immaculate. And there's a lot of people sometimes in some of those scenes, and
yeah, a lot of
I mean,
extras.
right. So it when I was watching it, I was like, and it's kind of from the end of the American golden era of very large, like we had North and South as like TV movies and things like
Yeah,
that.
yeah, totally, totally. And it's funny watching it because it's pretty much, apart from Cheryl Ladd, English character actors. And some of them are like kind of playing it pretty straight, like Ronald Pickup and Joss Ackland. Every time I see Joss Ackland, I think diplomatic immunity from Lethal Weapon 2. Um,
It was driving me crazy. I was like, I know that guy. I know that guy. And I popped up an IMDb. I was like, yes, okay. Totally coming back to me.
but then there's so they're playing it pretty straight. But then on the other hand, I loved Edward Snapes, the journalist, and even better, Mrs. Hackett, the brothel madam, because they were acting like it was panto season. They were totally going for it. They're like, "Cool, blimey, sir, what are you talking about, governor?" No, no, this is great.
Well, even in the woman who plays the prostitute, Lucy Harris, which
Oh
that
yeah,
is from the book. All of that stuff is, but
yeah,
she was
she's
great.
good.
She was great. I mean, I
Yeah,
thought. Um,
yeah, because he did have a room in the book, didn't he? Like that he was
mhm.
kind of staying at. I
And he
think
had a woman who he was kind of,
beating up.
yeah, yeah. I mean, it's you can't really get around what Hyde's up to. Yeah.
Yeah,
What they
possible.
don't do is in the book, there's all the stuff of like when he first turns into Hyde. Hyde is like small and weak, and over time he becomes stronger because Jekyll's let him out, and then eventually it's the battle for who's gonna
Mm,
around.
mm.
And they kind of go straight to, because they're using Michael Caine.
Yeah, they got to
They go
get.
straight to, oh, it's the same size guy. So I think we've missed a lot of story in this movie.
Well, I was kind of impressed by the fact that I remember the first time I saw this, I was kind of impressed that it wasn't just Michael Caine with like a big beard stuck on him and his hair tousled, um, and crazy teeth. It was actually like they really went for it with the makeup, and he actually looks totally different. He does like physically transform. Although I'm not sure about the hair going into the scalp. I don't think I can't buy that. But like the rest of it was pretty cool. I thought. He
Yeah,
actually
the
does look
hair.
like a big bald thug. He looks like Vin Diesel, actually.
You see that for family. Yeah, no, I at first when I was watching it thought it wasn't Michael Caine, and then he did something. I can't remember what it was, but he like did some head gesture, and I was like, oh, that's totally Michael Caine.
So pointing his finger. My name is Mr. Hyde. If I did emotional voice, I'm Dr. Jekyll. Um, yeah, no, it was good. It was good. And you did get the full transformation. They kind of at least they showed it because I thought some of these kind of like adaptations do tease it, but they actually went no, we're going to show the whole thing a couple of times actually. So that was kind of cool. Um, I did kind of laugh at his laboratory though because he had so many different colored vials. It looked like he was making a soda stream or something.
The funny thing is, I was watching the more recent Star Trek, and there was a doctor working on a formula for something, and it looked almost like I was like, I know you think you have to do that for TV, but it's like we're in HD era now. You don't need to have the rainbow of colors.
They don't all have to be different colors.
Yeah, it was a very good TV movie lab with its making sure you're punching those colors up in the lab, doing very hammer.
And I like how, he obviously, rapes Cheryl Ladd as Hyde. But then, he's like trying to cover it up, and you can kind of tell that the servants are like kind of not sure what's happening, but the butler's trying to help him. But then you got that really nosy housekeeper who's just basically going, "Whoa, I thought, whoops, shouldn't I have said that?" And just like putting her foot in it all the time on purpose. And then when he finally, admits to Cheryl Ladd, which, I think she takes incredibly well. When he goes, actually, it was me who did that to you, who beat you out the other night and raped you.
Yeah, that's when you can tell it was all men working on the film. Like, not a single female voice was heard as they wrote and produced that movie.
Yeah, because I mean, she's just like, okay, I'll cover for you, basically.
Yeah.
And then you get a little bit with the investigators as well, who were like, like the typical East End police. I kind of felt I like the little kind of like the small little jokes, like have another chestnut when they pretend to be chestnut sellers and stuff like that.
Right. What I didn't quite get that you talked about the housekeeper who like she just seemed to have it in for Jekyll for some reason, and I couldn't. I guess because of the impropriety of the situation.
Oh, yeah, it was weird. Well, the butler complained about her early, didn't he? He said she's like a terrible housekeeper. And then she seemed to be like, I don't know, just like a troublemaker. But it was a bit weird because like she's obviously putting herself out of a job.
Yeah,
I was thinking I'd have sacked her straight away. I would have left her hanging around to like cause more trouble.
Yeah, it was. I was like, how does he not just go to the butler and go, "You've got to let her go"? Like,
yeah. She keeps leading the police here and stuff.
Yeah, this isn't going to improve. You need to cut loose.
Well, I also had the great Michael Caine scene, which he's got one kind of similar to it in The Swarm, where he has the small child who's like, "My name is Michael Caine, and I will save you." And then, he performs an ad hoc operation, and he goes, "There you go. You have some warm milk now. You'll be all right." It's like, Michael Caine is a saint. Thank you, Mike.
I've performed open skull surgery on you, taped you up.
The other guys go, "Don't do it, doctor. Nobody's ever survived." He's like, "I know what I'm doing. I'm not even going to sweat doing this. I don't even need to be swabbed." So that's funny. That made me laugh actually, because that was almost like, okay, we get it. He's a good man, but you're gonna slap us over the head with it, basically.
Yeah. It
shorthand, chronic shorthand.
I mean, it does get the job done. You get basically who the guy is, but that was probably the thing I missed probably the most was they never really gave him many scenes to kind of reflect on what he was becoming or which is to me kind of the point of the Jekyll and Hyde story. And so they kind of externalized it all through Cheryl Ladd's character. Yeah. And then, I don't know how far we want to jump ahead, but then at the end, it's like he's got the weird little kid who's the product of their coupling.
It's a special ed kid, I'll have you know. That kid. I like how the kid looks exactly like him though. He's like a small little bald thug. And he's even like smashing up a wagon behind her.
I noticed that. I was like, did they just leave that kid to it? Like at first, like I didn't.
It's like, I mean, he could just be like badly brought up. She could be a terrible mother. He might not be particularly like an evil person, but But yeah, that's kind of funny. The look into the camera at the end. It is his child. That's kind of like that made me laugh as well.
Well,
But
it also was like a weird, like, there's going to be a sequel. And I'm like, there's not going to be a sequel to this.
yeah, no, there's never going to be a sequel to this. I mean, I guess it was kind of saying like the Hyde part survived. I guess even though he killed himself, but yeah. Um, and I mean, there you go. Whoops, spoilers. But yeah. I mean, Caine shoots himself at the end. He shoots himself twice, which I was like, okay, because he seemed to shoot himself in the head. So I'm like, okay, he shot himself twice. Okay, but he clutched the photo of himself and Cheryl Ladd, which was very sad as he died. Um, so it was very melodramatic, but I kind of liked it. It was a nice downbeat ending. You know how much I love a downbeat ending.
Well, and it felt very, I don't expect a happy ending at the end of Jekyll and Hyde. And since they were setting it up to be kind of this romance, it seemed appropriate.
Well, it's also weird how. So I guess like he burns his book with all his formulas in. Always a stupid move. Well, you just put it on a high shelf or something, and or put it in a safe, and then of course he throws all his stuff away as well, all his redux again, not a good idea. And then of course, but then they have a montage of him and Cheryl Ladd. Obviously, she's recovered from like being beaten up and raped. Of them like going to the theater and ice skating and eating ice cream. So I'm like, how long is this supposed to be going on? Because it seems like about in real time, because everybody else is acting like, the journalist and, the police are still just carrying on. So for them, it feels like the next day or the next couple of days. But like Caine and Ladd seem to fit in like about months worth of stuff. And then suddenly, yeah, I guess he like goes around to his dad's and starts like reverting back into Hyde.
Yeah. I was not clear on the timeline, partially because there was also a bunch of stuff that was showing up like in the paper.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, you're reporting on stuff that might have happened weeks ago now at this point.
Yeah.
It was I don't think they managed their timeline super well, but
no. Because I guess it was like, hey, they love each other even though society frowns on them. In a bit like that Martin Scorsese film with Michelle Pfeiffer that I can't remember the name of, but Age of Innocence, was it?
Oh God, yeah.
Yeah, but it's kind of similar to that, isn't it? It's like they don't care, even though everybody's got it in for them. And then he goes to, and even the Prince of Wales wants to see him, so he's kind of looking up. He's looking up. It looks like he's going to survive this. But then, of course, he goes round to his father's for a glass of sherry at the end of the night or brandy, and he starts turning to Hyde and smashing up the wine cellar.
Yeah, I think did he kill his dad?
Well, I'm not sure that was on purpose, but he knocked over all the shelves, didn't he?
Yeah, I didn't think it was on purpose, but I don't remember seeing the dad again after.
Yeah, the dad was definitely got squashed because the mum comes down later and screams, and he's under all the wine bottles. So they got rid of the dad, and then the mum goes into I guess like a shock coma or something.
I'm telling you, man, don't mess around with the chemicals.
Don't mess around with God's will, as Joss Ackland would say.
Well, it was kind of a funny movie in
nature versus chemicals, wasn't it?
Yeah,
because Michael Caine was like chemicals for everything. Let's all take drugs.
But he's not wrong. Like that's kind of how medicine works. So I was like, I wasn't clear if the filmmakers didn't know how medicine works. Or
also weirdly early on, Joss Ackland says, "You killed my daughter by all these like almost like natural herbal, trying all these different herbal methods." And I'm like, but that's kind of what the opposite of what he's doing for the rest of the film, really.
Yeah.
So that didn't make any sense either, really.
Yeah.
Because he has that great little speech, which I don't know if that is in the book. but it wasn't bad. Where he's kind of saying, one day we'll be able to kind of, through the use of chemicals, create different kinds of men. Some men for fighting, violent men, which made me think of Soldier with Kurt Russell. Yeah, guilty pleasure. Um, and like quiet men to be bookkeepers and whatever, and intelligent men to like do mathematics and all that kind of stuff.
I think the focus in the book was he was really trying to, I think, separate his good, like evil Kirk from good Kirk. Like
he's trying to get rid of the evil, wasn't he?
He and that was, I mean, so you could extrapolate from kind of the way they kind of very black and white way they phrase it in the book to that speech. And which I did think about while I was like, well, this isn't quite where he was going in the book, but I can see, if you were to say, okay, but what is the practical application of this beyond, this, philosophy mixing with, chemistry.
Well, it's kind of a bit similar to The Fly, isn't it? Where he's trying to purify himself.
Yeah.
But of course, you don't allow for like the word literally fly in the machine in that case. But yeah, same with this. Really, I guess it kind of backfires and it actually brings out the evil side instead of getting rid of it.
Yeah, and it's a cautionary tale. It's a big reminder not to test on yourself.
Yeah.
Like so many horror movies, that's really what it boils down to.
That's very true.
Find another test subject.
Test on somebody else. Test on a small child. Or
yes.
Or puppy. Jeff Goldblum should have stuck to baboons in the Fly.
Yeah. And Joss Ackland's character,
diplomatic immunity.
But he didn't seem to be making any sense, and then Caine agrees with him at the end.
Yeah,
and so I was left a little bit like, huh. Well, I guess that's what the movie is saying. So I think.
Well, yeah, because they set him up as like an old fuddy-duddy who's totally out of touch, and they all kind of laugh at his, he's out of date, his theories. He's a bit of a Luddite. And then at the end, they kind of go, but he kind of was right.
Yeah. Which I thought was a kind of a weird pivot of like, it's not so much that Jekyll was wrong, it's that he shouldn't have experimented on himself.
Yeah, no, totally. If he'd have had like, I guess like, well, a test subject, yeah, he could have refined it, maybe.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
do better science, Jekyll.
Inject a mouse, and then you suddenly get a mouse with a top hat and a big like twirly moustache.
He's like,
yeah, bites your finger,
wringing his little paws, like scheming. But yeah, I think that should have been
cheese. Yeah, I mean, I'd liked it. Like I say, it's definitely got flaws. But I think I'd enjoyed watching it. It was. I think it was like a very obviously a nostalgic throwback for me as well. I mean, it's like from an age of television that's obviously gone. And like you said, when it was a big deal. This was a big production at the time. And it was kind of like, sit around with your family and kind of watch it.
Yeah, I think if anything, I felt like there was a certain distance from the main characters that the movie kind of holds you at bay almost. Like,
yeah.
They never let you get too close to the characters, which it felt just strange. And part of it was through how it was written. Definitely a big part of it was how it was shot. But there just weren't a lot of scenes where you're like, well, what is the inner workings of how these people are functioning? Like, even as Sarah's going through all of her stuff, of course we can understand, like, she's a woman in 1884 and she's just lost, like, she's been thrown out of her father's house. But you never really get like a speech about how she's doing or like, or any of that. All you really get are these little glimpses of like, well, I had a crush on you, when you married my sister, and that's kind of about it as far as like what's going on inside of her head. And with Michael Caine, who absolutely can deliver on that kind of stuff, they didn't give him a speech or any except for the one we talked about, which was really like a pro chemistry speech, not a here's who I am and here's what I'm going through kind of thing.
But he can't. I mean, he definitely, and also like when he does his best acting at the end, where he all starts getting sweaty and desperate, they kind of rush that. That's over very quickly. So he doesn't really have much of a chance to kind of show, the realization and breakdown. He just kind of keeps getting his hand out. His fingernails have gone black. He goes, "Oh!" bites his hand, and it's like, you kind of want a bit more, really. You want him almost like. I mean, he has a slight small speech with Joss Ackland at the end, but it's almost like too little, too late, really.
Yeah. By then, you needed that speech 30 minutes before.
And also, every time he like smashes his lab up, which is quite a few times, I'm like, it's convenient they only hear him the last time. Because I'm like, he's been doing that for weeks. Like every night, he knocks everything over, breaks out the window. It's only when it matters to the plot the butler goes, "I'll investigate."
Yeah. I mean, but yet I like you were saying, I wasn't watching it like unhappy and like, oh man, I'm going to drag this thing when we would talk about it. Yeah. I enjoyed it. I thought, Cheryl Ladd and Michael Caine were great. And if wanting more is a weird problem to have with a movie, and I felt like I wanted more, like give me more of what these two are doing here.
Yeah. I think it could have actually been longer. I think it could have been longer and actually had almost more dramatic scenes in there, I think.
Yeah.
It was nice seeing Lionel Jeffries, who, for British viewers, was kind of like, definitely a national icon as Michael Caine's dad. I think this was probably one of the last things he did. But he plays like the grandfather in Chitty Chitty Bang Bang. And he's in all kinds of stuff, all kinds of TV shows in the 70s and 60s and even 80s. So it's kind of great to see him out and about in his dotage,
Yeah, no, it was interesting as the names were kind of going by at the beginning. I definitely recognized that name. I recognized Joss Ackland's name.
Yeah.
But that would probably be about it of the cast that I was like, oh yeah, I know who that guy is.
Yeah.
Or at least, recognize the name from other credits. I didn't, for example, I didn't know who Miriam Carlin was, who played Mrs. Hackett, and I didn't know who Kim Thompson was. So and David Schofield, his face looked familiar, but I couldn't tell you where the heck I'd seen him before.
Yeah, well, isn't he the guy at the start of American Werewolf? Like,
oh my God, I just opened him up on IMDb. That is who he is. That's why I knew him. Okay,
he's the darts player, and he's also got a role, I think, as a policeman in the Benicio del Toro Wolfman, doesn't he?
Does he really? Okay,
and they brought him back just because he knows a lot about werewolves.
We'll do that one Halloween. I have not seen that since I saw it opening night in the theater.
Yeah, and they have good stuff in there from what I remember. I think we both said it was great when it broke out in London. But yeah, it was kind of like the end was a bit rubbish. So I think the WWF SmackDown between werewolves was a bit rubbish at the end.
Yeah. Maybe we don't need to do it as a podcast. I think we just covered it.
I'll just put you off now.
Anyway, I'm glad you brought it to my attention. I will tell the audience, like, because of the format of what we're doing, I was like, I think he said, because we've also talked about doing a Jack Palance Dracula.
Yeah.
But when I was looking up Jekyll's, there's a Jack Palance Jekyll as well.
Well, it's a double bill. I've actually got a DVD with both of them on, and they're both TV movies. I've no idea about the quality because I've never seen them, but I think they're pretty highly regarded. So if you can swallow Jack Palance, especially as Dracula, being Jack Palance, maybe they're good. Maybe they're kind of nice quality productions.
You never know. Well, I guess we'll find out.
You'll find out.
But we're doing another Jekyll, I think, for our next recording.
Listen, we got a few Jekylls and a few Draculas left, which we seem to be. It looks like werewolves and mummies are getting short shrift, but that's okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, but like I say, I recommend this if you can get hold of it. You were telling me it's on streaming though, so
yeah, it's on Amazon Prime. It's only in standard definition, and I will say, it cost as much to buy as to rent, which is always a weird moment. And so it was $4. And because I wanted to watch it over multiple nights, I went ahead and bought it. So now I own a copy of this forever and ever.
So complete your Michael Caine collection.
Yes. But I'm gonna just rewind it to watch the creepy little kid at the end over and over and over.
That is very good. That is very good. It reminds me of working at school. But that's my life. But yeah. Well, happy Halloween, everybody.
Yeah, happy Halloween.
I guess we'll see you next time.
All right. Thanks, man.
Cheers. Bye.
Bye.
What the devil would have me do. Jekyll and Hyde, Jekyll and Hyde. Yes, I'm Mr. Jekyll and Hyde. I'm Mr. Jekyll and Hyde. Jekyll and Hyde.
That about wraps it up for this edition of The Signal Watch, a production of the League of Melbotus. Thanks for sticking with us. If you enjoyed the podcast, we invite you to drop on by the Signal Watch blog, where you'll find write-ups of a wide variety of movies and more. We'd love to hear from you, so find us online and let us know what you think. Whether you prefer email, blog comments, or social media, we'll be happy to hear from you. We'll be back soon with more exceedingly high-quality content. So, until next time, God damn it, babies, you've got to be kind.